Once again, guys, now we actually are coming to our greatest grand finale show. As such, I would call. I do not know what Tom is going to say this, but Tom, feel free to unmute yourself. And there it is. There's a hello already behind you. Oh my goodness, I should have known that. So for just people, there might be a very less number of people on this planet who might not be knowing Tom Gattis, but he's an amazing mentor. He's an amazing friend. He does amazing things as a dean at Columbus College of Art and Design. But apart from that, I think he is the person who understands industrial design. And I think today, I think hopefully we try to see what was industrial design, what are we going through, and what might be this newer kind of a pivot to abnormal, as they say. But before that, Tom, just to put the context, at least for me, when I came to the US 19 years ago, when I picture myself of that perfect American archetype, and I might be completely wrong in saying this, but it's an open kind of a Montana spread behind. There's an amazing cowboy kind of a person with Levi jeans, having Coca-Cola in the hand, resting his butt on a nice 69 Mustang, and in the back, literally an Airstream kind of a trailer. And I know your passion is right now restoring an Airstream trailer. Tell us about your hobby and how have you been using it, or what is your aim of traveling the world and things about that nature?
So, first of all, it's good to see you, my friend, and thanks for having me here. It's always a delight to spend some time with you. So, I've been fortunate enough to travel around the world, right? Multiple countries, multiple destinations and locations, and have enjoyed every bit of that. But I haven't spent as much time here in my own country. And the desire for having a camper actually came from shift camp, because I'm too old to sleep in a tent. We can come back to that in a moment. But
what did you say? Which camp?
Shift camp. We'll come back
Which
to that.
camp?
Oh yeah, lovely.
Which camp?
Lovely.
Did you say?
He is such a convert. I love it. He's our greatest brand ambassador.
Cheers.
But so my wife and I decided, we were gonna get one, and we've been renting them to go to shift camp, and been looking to buy one. And then the one I have now is a 23-foot Airstream that I'm redoing, that kind of fell in my lap. So the college had done a project, our students had done a project with Airstream in 2013, 2014. They gave us the finished prototype at the end of that, and we used it for several years, dragging it around to recruit students and promote the college. And we were kind of done with it, and I convinced them to sell it to me. So I tore everything out and started over. Not that the students didn't do an excellent job with the design, but it was kind of a fake prototype. There was no plumbing, there were no tanks, there were no gas lines, there was very little electrical. So it was easier to start over. So I literally gutted it back to the frame and began again. So I'm having fun. It keeps me out off the streets. I like to tell my wife that it's cheaper than therapy. It's not.
I think everybody has some therapy. I think my camera is my therapy. I don't know why we are compelled to think that way, but it gets you into your meditative kind of spirit. That's what I enjoy.
Exactly.
People love yoga. They go on runs, or they just go and sit below a tree and try to see what might come across the lens as such. So thanks again for that. And at the end or somewhere in between, please try to tell our audience more about Shift. I think for the audience as a disclosure, I also am on the board of Shift and Ether, but it is because of gentlemen like Tom and Owen and John. So without further ado, Tom, let us know what you think.
Okay, I'll share my screen and we'll get started. Yeah. Okay, bear with me a sec. Got to click the right things here. It doesn't work well. Okay, can we see it?
Yes, sir.
So I'm going to start with a little video clip. This won't take very long, but I think it kind of helps set the stage for the rest of the presentation.
Would you mind telling me whose brain I did put in?
And you won't be angry?
I will not be angry.
Abby someone.
Abby someone. Abby who?
Abby normal.
Abby normal.
I'm almost sure that was the name.
Are you saying that I put an abnormal brain into a 7.5-foot long, 54-inch wide gorilla? Is that what you're telling me?
So I've heard from many people about how COVID-19 has impacted us and is creating this new normal. And new normal just doesn't feel right. So this clip from my favorite Gene Wilder movie, Young Frankenstein, helps illustrate how I'm feeling. I really think that the future will be anything but normal, and it may not be all that pleasant. So in the US and across much of the world, humans have been involved in this big pivot to remote, online, virtual, work from home existence. We now need to stand 6 feet apart. We wear masks, we bathe in hand sanitizer. We worry about the safety of our groceries and the availability of toilet paper. We worry that our children are going to be falling behind in school, and some struggle with feelings of isolation. We've been forced to face our own inadequacies in the kitchen as we stop going out to eat. And we abandon our friends and seen our world shrink as we no longer socialize outside of the home. So these are unprecedented times, and this big pivot is having a very dramatic effect. So given all of this, it's clear to me that the future will be anything but ordinary. And so I borrowed this phrase from a friend of mine, Ken Tinsner, who's CEO of a company called Spiderworks in Toronto, when he says, the future is about abnormal. So let's examine a few of these abnormalities. COVID has been particularly brutal on American small business. Small business in America represents the majority of all businesses and employs nearly half of the private sector workers. There's been a 47.5% revenue decline in leisure and hospitality, over 16% decline in education and health services, and slightly more than 14% in retail and transportation. This is an aggregate of about 19.1% decline in revenue for all small business. And with these declines in revenue come declines in employment. Businesses that were not deemed essential early on were hit particularly hard, and this was felt especially across small business. Small businesses with fewer than 50 employees experienced a 22% decline in employment, and many of those have not been rehired as of September. So, one of the immediate effects of COVID was a sharp decline in spending and a sharp increase in savings. The personal savings rate peaked at 34% in April, the highest level in recorded history. The impact on our social norms has also been pretty dramatic. Nearly 9 in 10 adults tell us that they have changed at least a little due to COVID. 91% of adults feel uncomfortable at a crowded party. 42 have some level of discomfort at the grocery store. 38% have discomfort visiting with close friends and family. And 40% have worked from home during the pandemic. This figure is higher for college educated and upper level incomes. Marketing has had an impact as well. A significant number of marketers are reporting that a campaign launch has already been delayed, altered, or outright canceled. Evidence of this is in Google, who cut their marketing budget 50% across their business. 70% of marketers tell us that their face-to-face interactions are either partially or fully virtual now, and many of them don't see that as a short-term fix. Higher ed is facing its most significant crisis in my nearly 25 years in the industry. Enrollments are down as some students choose to stop out rather than learn virtually. International enrollments are down across all colleges and universities. At some institutions, this represents 30% of their total student population. The overall cost in higher ed remain fixed, even if delivery has shifted to digital. Payroll and healthcare, most schools' largest expenses, have not changed, while revenues from auxiliary services such as residence halls and food service are down significantly. The cost of technology has also risen as colleges and universities shift to new platforms during the pandemic. And there are doubts about the value of a higher education degree. Many companies are now saying a college degree is no longer required. These are companies like Apple and IBM, Bank of America, Chipotle. This is a dramatic impact on the higher ed industry. Now, some industries and some companies have taken advantage of this challenging market. Zoom has emerged as the biggest corporate success story of the year, as video meetings have become essential part of work and school for all of us during the pandemic. In early September, Zoom reported that revenue growth surged 355% year over year, and their peak daily meeting participants went from approximately 10 million in December to 300 million in April. I'm having trouble with my mouse here. E-commerce giant Wayfair increased sales 20% in its most recent quarter. Overstock said that April retail sales were up 120%. And Amazon grew by $570 billion, making the company worth nearly $1.5 trillion today. Supermarkets and their suppliers have fared well. Kroger's sales surged 30% in March, with its best-selling items being boxed meals and cleaning and paper products. And Clorox saw a 32% increase in demand for wipes and bleaches. And by the way, stopped making 409 so they could make more bleach. At-home exercise has been interesting to observe. Peloton reported that 66% increase in sales in their most recent quarter as consumers stuck in lockdown flocked to the company for its high-tech at-home equipment, which resulted in a 94% increase in subscribers over this time last year. Netflix added 16 million customers. The travel and leisure industry has been mixed, with airlines and hotels suffering the most. Airline passengers were down 90% in April and are still down about 69% today. And hotels are half staffed and half occupied. And while this industry is in a better place than it was in April, it's still in a crisis. Meanwhile, the recreational vehicle market is booming because people are considering camping trips over spending time flying in a metal tube. Airstream says that it's grown 70% during the pandemic. And this is really remarkable to me. They are sold out until 2022. Most of their new customers are first timers, never having owned an RV or a travel trailer before. Winnebago is reporting similar results, stating that 45 to 50% of its customers are first timers. Cruise America, the leading RV rental service, is experiencing about 3 times more rental reservations than compared to 2019. And the most remarkable, Outdoorsy, the Airbnb of the RV industry, saw sales surge 4,500% from March to June. That's just unheard of. So, based upon this mixed review of a select few industries and some information from my own cursory research, I want to share what industry might do well in a post-COVID world. Now, I should caution you that this is largely my speculation and my opinion and may not be based on actual data. Therefore, I welcome your dissension, but I will state now that you may be smarter than I am. So with that confident introduction, let's dive in. It's no secret that companies like Zoom are booming as we are all forced to work from home. The social stigma with working from home is diminished and shown many companies that it's not only possible, but it can be quite productive. The cost associated with large real estate holdings to give employees a place to work may decline as managers and CEOs realize the benefits of working from home. However, employees still need to work collaboratively. They still desire real interactions. And how many ideas rise to the top based upon a hallway conversation? And then there's this increasing concern for Zoom fatigue, as many of us spend more than 8 hours a day glued to a monitor. As my colleague Ken Tensner tells me, innovation often stops when the laptop is closed. So how do we respond to these challenges? Tools that make it easier for groups of individuals to collaborate online will become the norm, even if back in the office. The digital whiteboarding tool Miro has transformed many design offices and classrooms. Slack and Discord make it easy for information to be shared in real time. Zoom has become a godsend, but more tools are needed and we should be developing them. E-learning is here to stay. K through 12 to higher ed has been forced to embrace technology and digital delivery on a very large scale. My own institution was forced to switch our entire curriculum to a digital delivery model in March of this year. By the way, we did it in 10 days, including training faculty in new digital platforms, propping up a host of digital resources to support students and faculty, and transforming the way we teach hands-on, skill-based content without being face-to-face. Now, let me tell you, for an art and design school, this was very hard. Education has traditionally been slow to change and slow to embrace technology. But schools and universities were forced to turn to homeschooling and virtual classrooms during COVID. I believe that traditional teaching practices and delivery methods are going to become a thing of the past. Digital and virtual offer flexibility for student learning and teacher delivery. Digital content can be reviewed over and over, with the implication coming that learning sticks longer and is more impactful. Cost will decline as brick and mortar is replaced with digital, and content will be easily archived and recycled, making faculty more efficient and thus allowing them to serve more at one time. Healthcare is posed for tremendous growth because it was essential to fighting the global pandemic. Governments will likely heavily invest in the healthcare industry as they attempt to protect their populations. Expect more spending in disease prevention, testing, and care. Access to healthcare is going to become important for many around the world. With more mandated lockdowns and continued isolation, telehealth will become the norm. The industry will need to adapt to a digital world in demand from its customers. I can envision more on-demand doctor apps, AI-driven sites that let you self-diagnose, and access to medical professionals 24/7 from anywhere you have a Wi-Fi or a cellular signal. In conjunction with opportunities in healthcare is fitness. The pandemic has highlighted for many how important it is to take care of oneself. Healthier individuals get sick less often and recover more rapidly. As we become more health conscious, imagine technologies like smart sportswear and studios that push the norm of social media and digital delivery to engage new users in healthy and entertaining activities. Now, let's be clear, in a post-COVID world, there's likely to be something else. This one moment in time has changed everything about how we live, work, and play, and most likely is permanent. We've seen similar outcomes from SARS, Ebola, bird flu, and other global illnesses. We are a globally connected, world-traveling, inherently social society, and this is not the first COVID-like crisis we are likely to see in our lifetime. Does the designer have a responsibility to apply our trade, to think creatively, and to attempt to solve these problems? I believe that we do. So I focused on 3 series I see emerging post-pandemic where we may be able to impact the outcomes. Again, I share my caveat. This is my opinion, and you may actually be smarter than I am. So the first theory, the personal becomes dangerous. The comfort that formerly came from being in the presence of others will likely be replaced with absence. Instead of asking, is there a reason to do this online? Should we be asking, is there a good reason to do this in person? Now, many of us have already started embracing this thinking. How many of you, like me, will choose to order from Amazon or Target or Home Depot instead of driving a few miles from our homes for the instant gratification that comes with shopping in person? Now, in many markets, Amazon can deliver in a day, if not a few hours. But this goes beyond just the purchase of goods. How about services and experiences that can be delivered effectively to me from the comfort of my Barcalounger? Keep in mind that e-commerce isn't seeing a boom out of convenience, but out of necessity. Everything is going to be online as we shy away from actual human-to-human contact. It's interesting that the very thing that made e-commerce successful in the first place, consumers' lack of time, was alleviated during the pandemic. But as stay-at-home orders were lifted this summer, many reported a lingering reluctance to go back to old purchasing habits. And in fact, many embraced new online buying behaviors, and as such, everything can be found online. Food, either prepared in the raw or meal kits, entertainment, product, experiences, services from legal to medical to self-improvement, and apparel. Who would have thought buying shoes would be successful without trying them on? My daughter subscribes to that theory, by the way. Companies will need to embrace technology and replicate their brand experience in a virtual experience. Designers can help these organizations with new service design models that look at their entire ecosystem and ensure a delightful experience across every touch point. Companies and organizations that successfully respond to this prompt should be poised for success in a post-pandemic world. Theory number 2, there is a hunger for diversion. The rise of exercise from home and the exceptional growth in the recreational vehicle industry support this theory. We are desperate for a diversion that allows us to escape without leaving the relatively safe bubble of the home. The amount of negative news, warnings, and cautions around polite society, like wearing masks and social distancing, are causing us a tremendous amount of stress. Combined with the stress of being in front of a screen 8 hours a day, taking over the teaching of our children, the fear of losing a job, and don't get me started on the current political environment. All of this has us screaming, much like Edward Munch, for something to divert us to a more pleasant existence. As some of you know, I have a shop at my house. We were just talking about that, where I'm remodeling an Airstream. This is a diversion. It's my happy place. It's a place to unwind and forget about the many challenges and stresses in my life. All of us need a diversion. I believe there's lots of opportunity for the designer here. The online learning platform masterclass, I believe, is a great example. You can learn to cook with Gordon Ramsay, take photographs with Annie Leibovitz, understand acting from Jodie Foster, or learn the art of negotiation from former FBI hostage negotiator Chris Voss. These are about diversions, exploring long sought after hobbies, or just finding a way to entertain us and provide something enticing or mind expanding, even for a short period. How can designers help companies and organizations embrace this theory? If we think about a product as a diversion, does it change the experience? The Keurig is no longer a coffee maker, it's a culinary delivery experience. An automobile is no longer a form of transportation, it's a portal to an unexplored part of the country. What about services diversion? LegalZoom is no longer a place to incorporate my startup. It's access to a long-held dream of successfully operating my own business. The everyday, mundane experiences get elevated, changing something that could be potentially painful to something that diverts us to the delightful. Hiring a plumber or visiting the dentist doesn't have to be unpleasant, does it? Can design enhance a company's products or services and elevate them to the delightful and extend their brand experience in a post-pandemic world? Now, this last theory is probably the thing I know the most about, as I've spent the better part of 25 years in higher ed. Higher education was already struggling pre-COVID. In fact, we were already in a crisis. Enrollments were down across most higher education institutions and continuing to fall. The costs were rising while the available access to aid was declining. There is a mounting $1.4 trillion student loan crisis in America today. The accreditation system is at least 10 years behind the curve in squelching innovation. And there are many non-traditional, non-degree granting organizations that are taking market share because they are innovating around delivery and job granting skills. And as we've already stated, the industry is beginning to devalue the college degree. And then COVID hit. And it forced us overnight to completely upend our delivery model from face-to-face to virtual. Seasoned faculty had to quickly retool for new delivery platforms. Assignments had to be redesigned to consider those that were lacking access to technology or sharing that technology with multiple siblings in the same household. Many have inadequate or non-existing Wi-Fi access. Some of my students today are taking classes with a smartphone. The industry has toyed with e-learning for years, but few institutions have truly embraced it. Here we are today, 9 months after the beginning of COVID restrictions and lockdowns, delivering synchronous and asynchronous content virtually. We have learned a tremendous amount, and it can be done successfully. Some students have improved during this period because they can now access content anytime, day or night, and watch it again and again until they understand the material. And now that that initial step of moving content online has taken place, it's likely to become permanent. So how can we continue to improve? Designers in education must innovate. Accreditation agencies must embrace new innovation and adapt to meet the needs of faculty and institutions while protecting the integrity of the education. Educators must adapt to new technologies and differing delivery models and methods. Institutions must find ways to invest in technology despite declines in revenue. We must rethink what it means to earn a credential. For example, the non-degree granting organizations have disrupted by offering short courses that earn micro-credentials quickly and affordably. They deliver focused, skill-based content that meets the needs of students and employers. Higher ed has the content and the expertise. We just need to repackage it and adapt it for a digital delivery model to compete with these market disruptors. In the process, we can develop new revenue streams that offset losses and expand market reach. Can we leverage virtual reality to replicate the in-class experience? If a student can't come to the classroom, can we bring the classroom to them? Instead of teaching a student to draw by watching the instructor via video feed, faculty could be interacting with them, drawing on top of their drawings and giving that one-on-one instruction that our students desperately desire, just doing it inside of a virtual world. Now, one of the inadequacies of our current virtual delivery environment is the loss of those serendipitous moments. So imagine one student raises their hand and asks a question. It leads us down a path that was neither planned nor expected, but somehow it contributes significantly to the overall understanding of concepts for the entire class. Our students have told us that they miss these moments the most. As you can imagine, this has been replaced with faculty answering many more emails. Could VR be a solution for these moments? Can we learn from masterclass? Now, most of us don't have the ability to bring Ron Howard to our classroom to teach directing or Jay Mays to teach automotive design, but what we do have is an extensive network of trained and highly respected professionals across every industry that we could leverage to share those experiences with our students. At CCAD, we began doing this in March when COVID first impacted our delivery. A bonus of a global pandemic is that our alumni are much more open to giving back and talking with students, especially since that interaction can take place from the convenience of their home or office via video conference and doesn't require travel. There's much more to share about higher ed and how we must pivot and innovate. And those that know me know I can go on for hours about this. But sadly, our time is coming to an end. So I want to leave you with these final thoughts. We may soon see a vaccine to protect us from COVID, but we should not dismiss this moment and the impact that it's had on all of us. This is clearly not the last of these type of global challenges we will face. How we respond now will be written in our history. Did you as a designer participate or sit at home? Did you accept these changes as the new normal, or did you contribute to the creation of solutions? I challenge each of you to view this as another wicked problem to solve and accept that the future is about abnormal. How will you respond? Thank you very much.
Awesome, awesome. I do not know. It's difficult to see the clapping and applause. Thank you, Tom. That was
My pleasure.
I do not know. Means I'm just writing my own notes on what how we're saying and how we're telling and bringing to your new three theories. Theory is a pretty strong word. Means theory of evolution, theory of this, and now we have theories from Tom. And I'm there are plenty of questions, but I like the way you're trying to bring down to the element of preparing us to make sure we should be faced something coming out of the gate, not just right now, as you said. I think you. Foreshadowed this, or this might be the strain might be coming 2 years, 3 years down the line too, because we have
Right.
seen that happening with Ebola and SARS and bird flu and whatnot. I can try to ask from plenty of things. I will try to see how the questions are coming in. The higher ed is a pretty important element, especially when people say like, "Hey, we don't need you to have any credentials." Can you spend the same thought on the other end of the spectrum for kindergartens and elementary schools and maybe middle schools? And the problem is I'm faced with two monkeys in my house and they are completely now holed up over here. At first, for the first few months, I was like, okay, 3, 4 months, they let them enjoy and have the best vacation ever kind of a thing. But
Right.
now, especially us in Michigan, we got a directive that they will be in the school, a virtual school till next spring. As simple
Yeah.
and as bad as that. Now I know they're going to lose an entire year. It's for us right now. I think most of us are braving here for an 4 hour long webinar. It is it sucks energy from you. The smaller kids, just is impossible for them to be in front of the kids and not get distracted, because diversions are good for us. how,
Right.
how do you think would or should be good for them?
It's an interesting dilemma that we're facing because, prior to COVID, K through 12, particularly public schools, were already having their own issues, right? Programs like No Child Left Behind and, whatever the others are, they weren't working, right? And we instead lean towards a rely on standardized tests to measure the ability of our schools to deliver what they should. And, it was failing everywhere. So, it was already taking time away from our qualified teachers to teach to our students, right? And now that COVID's here, we're transferring that qualified teaching to untrained, unprofessional parents. And not that we're not smart people, but we're not trained to be school teachers, right? So it's a real dilemma, and there is a sense for this lost generation that is going to miss out at least on a year of their education. And how is that going to impact us, 10, 20 years down the road as these kids are unprepared?
It's going to be, means you're right, means I would say I have 3 degrees. I'm decently smart enough, but I'm not smart enough to handle what are the needs for an elementary and middle school at the same time, while still
Right.
continuously working from home or continuously working more from home. That poor guy, he has to have a trumpet class virtually. It's like why even he's trying to get himself taught in the world of music. But
I
I
did play
think
I did play the trombone when I was in junior high, so I might be able to help there.
I would definitely have you explain some basic things to him about the things. Uh, there are so many things. Means I know you are an industrial designer. We are talking about what can our trade do to go forward. We have always been classified as the most optimist species ever on this planet as compared to any other trade, and that might be a little bit more heretical, but I think that's okay to assume. How Before even going that, I know we can put plenty of things over there. Let's talk about the next question I had in mind. We talked about the schools and K to 12. Let's talk about the physicality of things. I think most of things are going to be virtual, but events. Not just because of we are a design studio and we all met during a conferences, or you put conferences together and events together. How are we going to miss on that physicality? We are, and how can we brace up for that? Means
Hmm.
let us know what is shift, what is the physicality of an event on the abstraction level, and then how we can find those somewhere else, if at all.
Yeah, our shift camp has been impacted as well, and just for our audience sake, so myself along with a small group of volunteers, very dedicated volunteers, I should state, um, support this design camp called Shift, where we typically bring somewhere around 100 students into the woods to some property in North Alabama, We surround them with professionals from all over the place, and give them these crazy challenges to solve. And at the end of the day, it's really not about the challenges. It's about the camaraderie. It's about them starting to build their professional network, about them learning to collaborate. Kind of important skills that we noticed we weren't able to accomplish in our classrooms, which is why John and Owen started this to begin with. But now we've been forced to pivot because of COVID. We didn't have a camp this summer. We're not going to have one in December like we typically do. And so we pivoted to digital platforms. So I will make a plug here really quick. November 30th to December 3rd, 4 nights of 2-person panels. These are about an hour long. They should be really interesting and enticing. We're kind of doing some common and not so common pairings. So there'll be really interesting discussions. And you can find out more by following our Instagram account at Shift Design Camp or on our website, shiftdesign.us.
By the way, it's already out in the chat. Lania did put the link.
Of course
over
it is.
there. No, absolutely. My question would be, like, let's say us, design studios or design studios like us, independent design studios like us, we still used to go to plenty of these trade shows, conferences, watering holes, to not just sell design, but to understand what's happening, talk with peers, trying to get a bearing of what's going on and going everywhere. How are we going to think about that as we go to the next year?
I don't know. That's a great question, because there's so much that's gained from those conferences. Besides the speakers and the presentations and the sales pitches and the various things, it's the networking, it's the hanging out with friends that we haven't seen in a year. It's the keeping your pulse on what's coming down our industry or in the segment or in the market or whatever, the trade show or the conference might be about. And that's really hard to replicate like this. I mean, you and I can easily have this conversation and share, somewhat with the chat what others are thinking, but it eliminates that sort of participation from the other audience members, right? Wouldn't this be better if we could extend that conversation to, what does somebody else think? Share with me. I've given you my thoughts. Share with me. Disagree with me even. So that we can continue to build upon that collective knowledge that we all have.
And Howard, I know you are actively tied with plenty of design companies that you actively work for through your students also. So talking about not just an independent design studio, but talking about design trade in general, in between huge studios.
Yeah.
How is, or what is, do you think, the future of design itself in a design house? Because there are so many cues coming out from AI, or it might be trying to go with participatory design. Howard, does the expertise of curated design, where you are training industrial designers, they're going back to the, I would say, the industry, and they're trying to go and find not just solve problems, but find new opportunities. The entire context of designers feeding the design studio and staff designers, how that might suffer or expand?
So at the end of the day, as designers, we're trained not to think about what we want, but what the customer wants, right? So it goes from, if I design for myself, that's a market of one. If I design for everybody, that's a market of many. And I think that's the ticket, right? That we still have that ability to bring the customer's voice to the table, to share that with the organization or the company that we're working for, to help them understand from their customer's point of view what they really need, want, and desire. And those are kind of magic moments when we can find those insights and bring them back to the equation to help solve the problem. Not everybody can do that, right? I think one of the things that separates us from some other air quote designers is that ability to bring the voice of the customer in. So maybe that's what we're selling now. It's not so much that we have this CAD skills or we can build models or draw or whatever else, but we're bringing to them that perspective of what their customers really need, want, and desire.
Yeah, and talking about the design and the creativity, imagination, and inspiration, Tom, what is your inspiration? Where do you seek inspiration? And then now, how are you going to seek that inspiration from a distance?
You know, one of the challenges for me as an educator is an empty campus. So I'm in my office today. I'm in the building practically by myself. There's no students around, and that's disheartening. Inspiration often came from my students, right? Their enthusiasm for design and enthusiasm for learning. I miss that desperately. It's been a real challenge for me personally because I haven't had that interaction with students in the way I normally would. And the same goes with my colleagues, probably much like you and your colleagues are feeling, is not having those conversations in the hallway or that cup of coffee and just talking about the mundane things, but you know, that camaraderie that comes with others that you share a passion with. So how we're replicating that is going to be hard. So, you know, in education, we've done that with lots of alumni coming back via video conference to share their story and their journey. That helps, right? At camp, we obviously did that with Shift Camp, with bringing those professionals to share their stories and journeys with our students. But it's really hard. And I don't know that I have a good answer, quite frankly, but surely as a profession, surely we're smart enough to solve this wicked problem, right? Surely we can help people, you know, figure out how to gain those missing elements while still maintaining public safety. And we have to we have to frame everything that we do today in the context of our own and the public safety.
And that's always have to be given. We always, let's say, always had that possibility of not just designing for the end user, but understanding the context and making sure the other tentacles the product is going to reach out are also, there's not just a single member or a buyer of our design. The people, the context, the space, society around them is also buying into it. So that really explains that a lot. But coming back to the element you mentioned, that we should not talk about this, and we should not talk about the political perspective of what's happening. But I think somebody asked me, like, hey, Jeevak, means I was following the presidential debates. I do that for every 4 years. It just understands the pulse from a completely different sense. I meticulously take notes. So some of my dear friends, just like mentors like me, asked me to say, like, if somebody asked you to create those 8 different segments, what are the questions you as a designer are going to ask these 2 candidates? And one of them was, why is it taking so much long time to have a chief design officer for the United States of America?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Can you help us in disseminating your thoughts about that? Because I would say, and this might be again a hubris as a designer, but yeah, we can solve products, services, experiences, not just for an industry, but also for a county, also for a state, and also for a country. Because we are facing this big, hairy, systemic, I would say, consequences of doing things or not doing things. What would be your perspective on this, Tom?
So here's a great example, I believe. The US tax code. Americans spend approximately $300 billion a year complying with the US tax code because it is
300
so,
billion?
yes, just in compliance, not paying our taxes, but compliance with the tax code. So that's ludicrous. That's a design problem, right? We easily could make that simpler, more friendly, more clear and understandable, right? Have you ever read any of those documents? My God, it takes a PhD in astrophysics, engineering, English. You know, I don't. It's not comprehensible, right? I mean, I'm a pretty smart guy, but good gosh, there's got to be a better solution, right? That's where designers can have an impact, right? I think that's a really simple example. But then apply that to Medicare and healthcare and you know, I mean, you know, what are all the various things that we hire or that we rely on government to provide for us, right? So what's interesting to me, if you think about that, is if government is going to build a highway and they need a bridge, does a bureaucrat design the bridge? No, they hire a civil engineer. So why won't they hire a designer?
Absolutely. I think we, as design community itself, have to rally. I think Bill Mogridge, rest his soul, he tried to push that as much as he can
Hmm.
in the federal agencies. But maybe we need somebody, maybe somebody like Mr. Gattis or whoever else want to step up the plate to make that action loud and clear. You talked about the tax. Or just the compliance 300 billion. And today we are hearing about billions and trillions from Jim and also from you
Yeah.
in a completely different contrast. I remember exactly what you said right now. Means I think most of you know I came to the US 19 years ago. I was pretty just fresh off the boat. Went for the let's say the interview to finally get naturalized as a citizen, and I distinctly remember that kind of an interview, and they give you a small booklet of 100 questions that you have to understand, and they will ask you 3 questions, right? So I think knowing you know me, Tom, I love history, I love American history, and it gave
Sure.
me news to just learn about not everything, but almost about everything, not just a 100 question thing. So I went for the class, and she was a officer. I was just literally an immigrant over there, trying to just go in, ushered in the room. She asked me 3 questions. Uh, Actually, 2 questions only. First one was, young man, when are you going to pay your tax? What is the date? Like, what? It literally came down to like, you have to be a taxpayer. I said, okay, this is the date. Second, let me know the longest river in the country. So like, and that's it. I said like, ask me more, ask me more. I have so much things from emancipation till the Confederacy and till the Constitution, and I read about those fathers of our nation, but nothing over there. But then I think now I know what not to do in front of a person, officer like that. But at that time I did not knew, and you have to fill lots of paperwork. As you said right now, you're a smart guy. I still think I'm a smart guy, but it was such an amazing burden over there. And at the end, after those thick sack of paper where you sign in, they say, hey, the burden of this was 10 minutes. Let us know how was it. And I said, it was 30 minutes. And I tried to tell her that
Yeah.
this was the burden of me for falling in. And she could not understand. I said, I'm an industrial designer. Can you please allow me to design this format for you? And then we had a completely different discussion. She was thought I'm a crazy guy, but there was no thought or consideration like how difficult even the small boxes you have to just write all those things in. But again, we are now
Yeah.
completely off the track. But coming back to the element of making sure design is recognized, and it doesn't have to be just industrial design, all the factions of design, interior
Right.
design, architectural design, graphic design, fashion design, how they can be integrated and finally used to really better the human condition on earth. I think that's what we all in a way are trying to be, and all in the way are trying to see how we go further from that. So again, not that I'm asking an exact answer. We are just trying to talk anything else about here. But going further, I think any nuggets of I think you have already spread plenty of nuggets of wisdom. But any questions or challenges for us as the audience to think about these are some of the elements where you might use some of your horsepower.
You know, obviously I can talk about education a lot, but I think one of the challenges that I see in our institution, like in others, is there's still silos of content, right? So the fashion designers are separated from the product designers, from the interior designers, and we lose that ability to have them collaborate and learn from one another, right? Now we know when they get in the workforce, they have to do that, right? I mean, you probably have designers, mechanical engineers, various kinds of other professionals that work for you, and they have to collaborate, and those collaboration skills are hard, right? They're not easy, they're really hard. So one of the desires I have is how can we figure out how to get those disciplines to collaborate more while they're a student, when they can afford to make mistakes, and when they have the relative safety of the classroom and the expert guidance of a faculty member. I think that's something that we got to start thinking about. In other words, we should take what is now a traditional discipline centric degree and blow that up and say that doesn't work any longer. Let's think about this differently.
Again, coming back to, let's say, non-COVID world, just as the industrial design, I would say, community, what are we industrial designers not thinking of? Again,
Mm.
pre-COVID world also, like what are the things that we would be glaringly missing that maybe now we can try to indulge more into learning it, maybe attend a master class, or how to extend what we do inside the business functions too.
It's a great question. It's the $64,000 question, if you know that reference. But you know, to quote one of my partners, Owen Foster, right? Owen's full of pieces of wisdom, right? You know that. And he said at one of our shift camps, and in fact, we adopted this to be kind of our tagline. He said that we're not trying to make a better world for humans. We're trying to make better humans for the world. I think that's a mantra that we all should be living by, right?
Say it again, please.
So we are not trying to make a better world for humans. We are trying to make better humans for the world. And as a designer, that really struck a chord with me, right? Isn't that what we're all here to do, right? Is to create a better place, is to do our best as good human beings to contribute and participate and be part of the solution. And my challenge there at the end is, are you going to accept this, or are you going to sit at home? And I think as designers, we have to accept these challenges, and we have to collectively, we have to dive in and try to help solve, whether it's COVID, whether it's world hunger or clean water, or it's a better coffee maker. I think it boils down to that we must participate in the solution.
We have to be participants in that. And again, going back to what you said about Owen, another great friend and mentor. Like I think I see the context, and going back to the element of the last VDC, we had a biomimicry and a bioinspiration speaker. And I think it goes well with what Doug Page also was referring to or alluding to. And that is, we are here, let's say humans, is because of this amazing kind of circumstances of what happened on this earth, where it is positioned in between the sun and the extremes, or how we are made because we are reacting or responding to the forces of the nature and context and physics around us. It's not because we are here and then world became around us. So in a way, it goes back to those basic formation of who we are. Why we find something beautiful is because how we were influenced for the last 4.3 billion years of what makes it beautiful. So in a way, it really addresses the primal fact of, we have to understand, I would say, the ecosystem really well, and then making sure we understand those forces of the ecosystem for that particular product category, and then reflect them and trying to make sure we put that attributes for those desired outcomes into those products, services, and experiences. That's really beautiful. I have one or two smaller questions, but before we go there, I'm sorry I missed the $64,000 reference.
There used to be the game show, I don't know, 60s or 70s, maybe, about the $64,000 question. I guess if you got that question right, you won $64,000. But it was always that.
That's really good. I think we have
they must not have shown that in India, huh?
No, at least I missed it. Maybe I was just going around the trees and dancing around in the world of Bollywood, which I still try to do given some times. Just trying a couple of more things about the personality of what Tom Gattis is. Last 8 or maybe now 9 months, we have been holed up in an empty, I would say, campus, or let's say our spare bedrooms. What are the things that you learned about yourself, Tom, that you never knew if it was not for COVID?
That's interesting. So, this past really 9 months. So, beginning in March, as the dean of the college, the responsibility for getting the curriculum flipped and getting everything ready and having this massive pivot fell on me. And one of the things I discovered is that I got excited about it. That yes, it was literally the hardest 9 months of my life, right? I've working night and day and just doing everything we can, and then the governor makes another pronouncement, and all hell goes, everything you just finished, you got to start over kind of moments. And so it was really challenging, but it was also really exciting because it was a big design problem, right? I found that I relished those big wicked problems to solve. And the other thing I began to realize or discover is a deep appreciation for the talent that surrounds me here at the college, right? We have some really, really smart people that are really insightful and really delightful to work with, particularly in a crisis, right? So you get in a crisis and you see everybody's real personalities come out. And I discovered that I really like these people. They're fun, they're engaging, they're smart, and they all are here for the same reason, which is what can we do to better the situation for our students?
That's beautiful. I think I like the element of only in the medium of extreme crisis or atrocious crisis. That's where your true self comes out, and then you understand the person. It might be your near ones, dear ones, employees, partners, clients of how things are going to go. That is.
Hang on before you go past that. I want to share one more thing, and I think I've shared this with you before, but I had a brother that passed away a few years ago from cancer, and it was really traumatic to the family, of course. But I got to witness this perspective and point of view of him realizing he's going to die, and how remarkable that journey was, right? About how he dug in to love his family, and how he began to just surround himself with other remarkable experiences. And I walked away from that going, that's my new life, right? That's my new approach to everything, is how can I surround myself with remarkable people? Because I don't want to waste my time on non-remarkable people. Does that make sense? And I don't mean to be that crash about it, but I think that's a discovery as well, is that's been highlighted over these past 9 months, is who are those people that I want to continue to work with, that I want to continue to be friends with and collaborate on things with. And those, there's a certain number of those that rise to the top because of that attitude that they have.
That's beautiful. And I'm again really sorry to hear about the news of your brother, but talking about death, which is always, I think, is always given. I think going back to the course by Bill Bryson, one of my favorite authors, he always has said, and we all know that from the world of science, it's 99% of the animals that we know are extinct. And is only 1% is where we are right now. So in a way, extinction is the norm of life. I think life is just an accidental element. But you also invoked amazing another thought about how you are going to be with the people that you get to choose and get informed by them and compare and contrast your notes with them. I think it was Richard Dawkins. He's a biologist as such, and he always says that you are, when I say you, means the human species, you are always molded by the hands of your dead ancestors and family members. Because it's the other way around. You might say like, no, because it's the passing of the genes, right? If you are on the Serengeti, if you are a deer, the passing of the genes have told the deer or the antelope or the gazelles to always look around and jump around when they see something which is a lion in the bush. But the same ecosystem in the Serengeti and the same genes of a lion has told that lion cub of how to be stalking and going near the prey and pounce on it. So it all depends on where you are, how are you molded by your line of thoughts, your brothers, your ancestry, your mentors, your newfound friends. And other part is the same ecosystem, coming back to now, this is captured the entire 4 hours over here. The ecosystems are always there. The market is always there. It's the onus of us as designers or educators like you, Tom, to find out only those dots which we should be really referencing and reflecting to, and making sure we are pushing out the noise way beyond us. It's not reacting to each and every stimuli and stimulus. It's how to make sure you understand whether you're a gazelle or a lion or maybe a plant in the same element, to what to look out for. It's not because they're doing something, let's go and do that. You will, or one will never survive. So that's the element over there. I think we are just 2 minutes over, but thank you once again.
One more thing. So you spoke at one of our, at Space Camp for our shift camp, and you gave this really magical speech. And there's a moment of that I still remember that I want to share. And you said something to the effect of, only you are the barrier between yourself and success, right? You are the barrier. And I think that's kind of what you're alluding to with that, are you the lion or the gazelle, right? That you are your own barrier here. So filter out the noise.
Yeah, thank you for that. And now changing that to a different article. It's literally a question like, who or what is stopping you. See, one of the greatest thing that that gift that my mom and dad gave it to me was, when you go to USA, it was not if, it was when you go to the USA, that's a land of opportunity. There is nothing stopping you. If you are in some other country, some other element, you might be caught in a different stratification or any other thing. Here, absolutely not. Everything is for merit. And I always yearn for that. And finally coming over here, and then I see young minds here and there who are brilliant, but somehow they have their own kind of a bubble that they create around them. Like, I cannot do that. You have to be fearless. And again, not being fearless in touching a tiger or fighting with a crocodile. That's a different fearless point. But from exactly as you are trying to allude to it, is there's nothing that can stop you. You are caging yourself into a bird cage. There's nothing that stops you. How to go out of those shackles and just try to do it. You may be successful, may not be. But coming to your point, then attach yourself with other partners. There's nothing, I would say, in this world that you can tackle by yourself. Again, going back to the Serengeti and African, I would say, quote, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go further, go together. And that's where it comes in, right? We all are in here in the same boat, and we have to reach out to people to just let them hear out. So thank you again. As we all know, our VDC was our 8th one. Today was the last speaker. And Mr. Tom, thank you for your nuggets of wisdom. If there is anything else from the audience perspective that the questions we might not have answered, please email them to them. We can send it to those respective, I would say, speakers, and they might choose to reply that. But thank you again, Tom. I'm so happy.
Yeah, my pleasure, my friend. Good to see you, and thanks for asking me to do this. It was quite enjoyable.
Absolutely, so. Absolutely. So once again, everybody, thank you again from the start. We had a very interesting afternoon. I loved it. I always love this. Jacqueline was amazing in trying to understand, or let us understand how to understand a different philosophy, maybe the Japanese Ikigai, and bringing it back to what she does each and every day to the manufacturing furniture industry that she belongs to. Then we had Jim, who literally took us on a nice interstellar journey, which is way beyond our imagination. When we say trillion, nowadays it's like, yeah, it's an everyday use number, but when you try to imagine that, it's a huge number. But I really, I personally enjoy being lost in the universe. It's not that you go to a night sky and say, that is the universe. No, we are a part of that universe. Somebody over there is looking the same at us and saying, look at that, that's an amazing star over there. So it was a fascinating journey. Again, thanks for that, Jem. Then we had our Sir Jonathan, which I just enjoyed the way of, we are still natural, organic animals, but there are elements that just our brain cannot do as fast as it should be, especially going at high speeds. It might be in the social world, in the commercial world, or literally high speeds on the freeway. So how to let the best part of what that kind of an handling of the collective wisdom that we get in the world of AI, and eventually it would be used for good, right? The greatest example is that you have a knife, you can kill somebody, or you can actually save somebody if you're a doctor. So it all depends. I think eventually, no matter what, one thing the human beings have always showed in any time of history, good always prevails over bad and evil things. So eventually, I think we will be referencing to the AI world and using it back to where we are. And last but not the least, Tom was here to understand the context of, let's say, the industrial design world, understand the context of what we are faced with. COVID is not once, not the second wave. Waves are going to hit. And not only that wave, there are other waves hitting other shores also, right? Climate change, clean water, pollution, racism. There's so many things that are still we have to understand and look. Right now, we are purely focused in this COVID world and work from home world, but we have to understand how these things are going to compound together. So I think it was, I'm always happy. The evenings are the best evenings ever when I try to go back through my notes and try to connect those dots together. I hope you also were happy. We are going to start this again next year. Please let us know if you want to suggest any speaker, or let us know what topics are more interested to you. Fortunately for Sundberg-Ferar, with our 87 years of influence and working with different partners, it is relatively easy for us to reach out in that industry and plug that kind of an expert and put it in front of you. And we are planning to already do that, but let us know if any specific topic or industry you want to learn, or you want to volunteer yourself, or volunteer your boss or your CEO. We will always look at that. So once again, it's November 19th. Looking for, have a great Thanksgiving. season next week. If you're in Michigan, you can only do it with one more family, that's it. But we have to understand what social norms need. Finally, we're going to make sure our species prevails and thrives and survives. Okay, sir. Okay, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, Lanea, all the speakers, over and out. See you next time.